Hey, I'm Pastor Rhonda.
And I'm Pastor Seth.
You're listening to Growing Hope,
Living Faith.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Growing Hope, Living Faith. This is episode number 32.
Man, who would have thunk?
I know. And we've only missed 1 week of recording.
Yeah. We've recorded every week sometimes we record 2 a week so that we can put one out. But last week was the first week that we really didn't record or do something new.
And that means I didn't get to see you for the week.
I know, and that's no fun. That's no good.
I know.
But it was a busy week.
It was.
You were at District Assembly for the Georgia District Church of the Nazarene. And I was just sitting on my rear end. So,
and Morgan's out of school.
Morgan's out of school. We were working on getting her. She's going to be teaching in she's actually moving states and districts and all that, moving from Tennessee into Georgia to teach. And so we had to clean out our classroom and do all that kind of fun stuff. And then try to put some stuff in our new classroom, but they're taking the ceiling, redoing all the ceiling tiles and the floors. And so, you can only put so much in there. And there's just all kinds of stuff going on. And so it just created for a busy week. But it is good to have the kids home and things are going really good. How was assembly as a whole?
It was very good. This was the best assembly I've ever been to.
It's awesome.
And I think it's because I've just, I don't know, I feel like I've grown in a lot of relationships across the district in the last 2 years maybe. So there was a few times where things got a little long and I won't name names. If you're listening, you know who you are, but I had several people texting me really funny text messages. And, and I will say Pastor Mark was on the platform. He was filling in for, Pastor Don Hicks.
Yes.
And so he was the district secretary of the day. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know, just to be funny, I would send him funny texts just to get him to laugh. And he's like trying to not laugh because everybody's looking at him. It's kind of payback for that time I was a page and everybody kept sending me around. But I don't know, that just really made assembly a lot of fun. And plus, just having lunches, we've got some great women clergy on our district. And I have the honor to be the director of us. I don't really know what that means other than I just love to cheer everybody on. But we did meet for lunch one day, and the funny thing is we did last year, and CJ Childs, what's her name now? Her name just left me.
I'm the worst with that. So CJ, we love you.
Everybody knows CJ.
Whatever CJ's last name is now.
She's the co-pastor at Covington Church of the Nazarene.
Yes.
So anyway, last year they were just trying to pray through the idea of starting a family. And so in the middle of the restaurant, we gathered around her as women and we laid hands on her and just started praying that God would lead them in the right direction. And if it was his will to give them a child to help, this happen and keep his hand on her. And so she's very, very pregnant now.
Awesome.
And so we were able to just praise the Lord for that. She's due in September. And then our waiter had a prayer request. And so we prayed for him in the restaurant. And it was just a great time of just being together and just encouraging one another.
It's so good.
Yeah.
So good. I wasn't able to make it to District Assembly, so it was good to hear some of the reports and things that were coming out and to hear your stories a little bit. And so.
Another highlight was Pastor Matt Hastings.
Yeah.
He preached and it was wonderful, and I got to lead worship for the NDI part of the convention, and it was really kind of cool that I got to work with my professor.
Yeah.
And he was very, very nice, and his message was great. So there was just a lot. I felt very loved. And then another thing that happened last week was and this is, I have very mixed emotions about this. Johnny Mae Welch has been the ladies retreat director for years, and I love her dearly. And I have served on that council for a few years, and I lead worship at the ladies retreat. But because of medical reasons, she had to resign and step down. And so the NDI board appointed me that position in her place. And like I said, it's bittersweet because I love her to death and miss her. her. But the thing is, they will miss her, but I won't, because I'll still get to work with her because she's going to train me.
Yeah.
But so yeah, just a lot to be thankful for.
You got a lot going on.
Yeah, I do. I know somebody said, like, why did they give that to you? You're the busiest person. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, because you're doing family camp music for the Georgia District Church of the Nazarenes. You're doing the music for family camp, which would be an awesome experience. I probably won't be able to be there, but I'm sure it's going to go really, really well. And you got preaching opportunities galore.
Several people to ask me about preaching
That's
this
awesome.
week, so excited about that too. And then next week, okay, so I'm just going to be real honest.
Yes.
I am scared to death to preach at Pastor Hunter's church.
Why?
Well, Pastor Hunter is actually Dr. Hunter Cummings, and he has been on our podcast.
Yes.
And
he's the one that came in and talked to us about Advent and kind of the calendar and why do we celebrate Advent and stuff.
Right. So his congregation is used to Dr. Hunter Cummings, and then they're going to get me. I can't even pronounce Athenians. So yeah, I'm a little worried about that, and I don't know. I feel like I'm talking way too much.
No,
so
this is great. No. Let's just keep this direction and stuff we have going on now.
Okay, so
no, it's good.
I'm going to fill in for him next week at Chattanooga Valley Church of the Nazarene, and I don't know. I feel like I'm still learning about preaching, and I'm still trying to find my voice.
Right.
And just like I said, the little things, like, do I stand still, or do I walk, or do I use a Bible, do I use my iPad, do I use a headset, do I use a regular kind of microphone?
Yeah.
So up until now, I think I have always just preached really from a lectionary passage, and I think I had like another in school when I was at Nazarene Bible College. I had like a text that was given to me. I got to choose several. So, but I'm really kind of feeling like doing a topical kind of message, because I just kind of feel that's where God's leading me.
Well, there you go. And that's all you can do. You know, is whatever you feel like God's leading you, wherever He is, that's what you have to do. Yeah.
And I think the topic is so broad too, because when you say the word grace, you know, if you're a Wesleyan, you know, there's prevenient grace, there's justifying grace, sanctifying grace, and glorifying grace, you know. But tucked into that sanctification grace or sanctifying grace, there's this provisional, this strengthening, sustaining grace. And I kind of feel like that's where I want to zero in, because, you know, life can get so hard.
Sure.
And we need supernatural help to help us navigate through storms. And so I've got a few storm stories to look at.
Fantastic. Just from scare you? Like, have you been through a storm and you're like, oh, that's just the worst thing ever?
Well, the one I'm looking at, I can't really relate to. I've never been shipwrecked.
Oh, that's true too. Like, I had a guy in college that I went to college with, and if a storm was coming, and it didn't even have to be like a crazy, terrible, terrible storm, he would literally leave college and drive out of wherever the storm was going to be to make sure that he wasn't going to be in the storm, wait for the storm to come, and then he'd come back. Like, he had such an anxiety and fear of storms.
Wow.
It's pretty crazy.
Jordan, are you listening? Because every time there's like a slight chance for a tornado, she brings these her babies and they hide out in her basement.
Yeah. Well, so it's real, you know, it's a real deal.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Well, as you can hear, we're doing something just a little bit different, right? You know, we were kind of talking about, you know, do we want to try to continue on with lectionary? We're entering into really what's ordinary time. We did lectionary kind of a little bit before Advent, all the way through Pentecost, and now for the Christian calendar, this is just known as ordinary time or common, I guess. I don't know. And some of you pastors may be like, that's not what it's called, but I don't. You know, it's whatever you call it. It's just this ordinary time where we are now pushing back towards Advent. Advent will kind of be the next really, really, really big thing. And we're actually recording this on a Sunday. This is our first time I think we've ever recorded on a Sunday. It's Trinity Sunday, and big thanks to Jacoby Campbell, Reverend Campbell. He has no idea, but we replayed his episode this last week, and hopefully you enjoyed listening to that. Little rewind that we did there. So we didn't talk about Trinity Sunday, and, you know, my whole big joke is always like, well, you know, if we probably would have talked about it, then everybody would have understood it 100% clear. The Trinity would have made sense to everybody. No, definitely something that we we just can't even grasp or whatever. But yeah, I'm blessed that I'm going to have an opportunity to preach this coming up Sunday because General Assembly for our tribe, being in the Church of the Nazarene, is upon us. And General Assembly generally happens every 4 years, but because of COVID, they had to actually push it back 2 years. So it's been 6 years since General Assembly has happened. And a lot of pastors go to that, and so I know I'm filling in, and you're filling in for a pastor who's going to be at General Assembly.
Like moving everywhere.
Absolutely, and so excited about that. I am going to be preaching the lectionary passage, so we're not going to go.
Which one?
That's a good question.
Romans?
No, I think I'm going to do the Genesis passage. Okay. I love the Genesis passage. Genesis 12, essentially the call of Abraham.
Abram.
Yeah, and it all goes back to that. And it's such a beautiful passage. And if you ever are just wondering, man, what is this about? What's this thing called the faith about? And maybe there's not a better place to start than the call of Abraham, where it all began, right? And essentially, God tells him, "Hey, I'm going to bless you so that you can bless other people." And that's it. Like it's nothing. There's really nothing more than that. I'm going to be your God. You'll be my people. I'm going to bless you as I bless you. Then the call is that you go and you bless other people. And and so it's as we're kind of coming through this whole season, this mentality of Jesus. Man, what a great call for us, the church, to remember, that's what it's about. It's blessing people. That God's going to bless us, and then the call that we have is just bless people. And then there's something I think within that blessing that as we bless people, then they'll begin to see the realities of God and who God is and what God is really all about. And so that's what it's about. As we bless people, we don't point people towards us, but we point people towards God, right? All of this came from God. God has blessed us. I'm going to choose to bless you, and then I'm going to choose to point back to God. And I believe that's a blessing to God. And so as we do this, we're a blessing to people. We're a blessing to God. And it's just a lot of blessings. You know what I'm saying? I'll probably that into the Matthew passage. It's the call of Matthew. It's the woman who touches his cloak, and then it's also I think the Jairus's daughter or whatever, they're raising from the dead.
Oh, now you're gonna make me want to change my mind and preach that passage. It's so beautiful, but I was like, could I say anything to add to that? Because I'm sure it's been preached so many times. But it's so good. It is really good.
Yeah, and Jesus, that's what he did, right? That's what Jesus, he blessed other people, right? As he received blessing, he blessed other people. He lived his life different than, other people. And instead of taking that blessing and turning it, but then he also invited other people into that, right? And that's kind of the call of Matthew, someone who, would have made a lot of money and lived the wealthy life and done some of those things.
We see that on The Chosen, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He calls him into that of, hey, it's going to be a blessing. And that's what Jesus was. And that's what changed people's lives, is he was just a blessing. He was there. He wasn't there to beat him over the head and all those things, but he was just there to be a blessing. And something within that process allowed people's hearts and lives to be changed.
You know what I loved about that passage? I love the fact that you just see Jesus get interrupted. Because don't we get just annoyed? Like you're on the way. I can remember when my kids were younger, and I was trying to plan worship, and I was working on ministry, and like Austin kept saying, "Mom, Mom," and I just kept, in a minute, why is he interrupting me? And it was like the Lord convicted me of whoever is in front of your face at any given time is your ministry assignment.
That's right.
And that's what Jesus did in that story. He was on the way to deal with the daughter that was sick with Jairus.
I think it was Jairus' daughter. Yeah. I have to go back and I haven't fully, I'm going to be honest, I haven't fully read it all, but I should have.
But he was on the way to do ministry. He was on the way, and this woman touches him, you know? Yeah. And so he stops everything and he deals with that. And I don't know, that just kind of, it reminds me that sometimes we can get so caught up in doing ministry that we forget to serve and love people that interrupt us on the way.
That's right. Yeah, and it's not that obviously he's not going to do something bad. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
it's even those good things that if we're not careful and we're not just present in the moment, we miss the people that really need blessing on a deep level. Right. And it's really. That's really quite fascinating. And Alex, I just love these stories of Jesus. And the fact that it goes all the way back to Abraham. Like I said, we've said this over and over and over and over. We just tend to complicate this on such a deep level. Right. And the call for Abraham is, man, just be a blessing. Right. I'm going to bless you and bless others.
Like we've said a million times too on this podcast, is God doesn't tell us to do something or expect us to do something without helping us do it. Yeah. And that's, the beautiful part about grace.
That's it.
And I think that's why I'm just doing a little research with what I'm preaching. Like I said, I can't really figure out which text I want to use, but I'm kind of leaning towards the one where he's defending himself as a minister. And he's like, look, I've been stoned and I have been in open sea waters. I have, he's telling these horror stories. And then it gets on down to where he has a thorn in his flesh, and God says, my grace is sufficient. My power is, you're made strong in your weakness. And sometimes, it does get hard to love others and do those kind of things like we're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. But it's just beautiful to me that he has given us a provision. He can empower us to do those things if we're willing to let that grace work in our lives.
Yeah. And it starts, once again, just with this faith, the faith of the woman, that she was willing to reach out and she, had that thought, only I can touch the edge of his cloak, man, everything's going to be better. And, but it's such a cool picture and image of the reality of Jesus, that he was known as this person, that if only I can get close to him, then my life's going to be different. Life's going to change. And what do people think about us? You know what I'm saying? Like, do we go through life and how we go about living life? Do people have that mentality about us? Not that we can make everything better or that we're going to necessarily be able to do away with people's bleeding and all that kind of stuff. But are we living our lives in a way that as people get close to us and as we are living this blessing, are they living with that mind frame? And if I know that that's someone, if I can get close and I can just somehow rub shoulders, then they're going to leave my life for the better.
So let me ask you this. This is when we're just kind of on the fly.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in that position where you wanted just to be close to someone, or where you were in the other, not being the person being that example, but like maybe when your faith was weak and you just wanted somebody to speak life into you, or you just really, can you remember?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of something specific. And like I said, we are just going off the cuff right now, so we're probably going to be all over the place. We're just like, let's just sit down and talk and see what happens. I've been blessed to have a lot of great relationships with obviously some people who are. I can definitely think of one time at college when I'd received some family news. It was just devastating. I mean, absolutely devastating to me. I can just remember crying in my room because I found out at nighttime, and just crying and bawling from this family news, and just not knowing. Like, there was just a lot of unknown. There's a lot of doubt, and there was a lot of things that was just really, really hard. And so the next day, I went and talked to one of the only persons I could really think to go talk to, but one of the nicest and most kindest man, Dr. Timothy Green. I went to his office because he was my professor. I remember just kind of sitting there and just kind of walking through scenarios and situation and crying. And it wasn't that he gave me the right answers, but he allowed me just once again to be able to I guess throw up on him, almost like I didn't throw up literally, but like I was just able to kind of get all of this out to him. And it wasn't, like I said, he had the right answer for me, but he was an ear to hear. And as I look back on that, man, that was just such a blessing to have.
Right.
And so, I have experienced this. If I probably sat down and really thought about a lot of other, things.
Sorry.
I mean, like I said, I was in Jamaica one time, and because I don't know. Have I talked about Mission to Connect on here or not?
You did one time. I think it was back in the fall. Tell us again.
Yeah. So when I graduated from Church Rebecca, I worked there for 4 years as an RD. I lived in Benson Hall for 8 years straight of my life, which is the undergrad male dorm there, and it was a great time. It was an awesome time. And when my time finished up, felt like, man, what's next? And was sitting at my church, and like I said, very clearly felt like God was telling me, hey, this door is closing, but I had no idea what was next. And those are some scary moments, when you feel like God is closing a door and there's no door to walk through, other door. And so I was sitting with a guy at the church I was attending at that time, and he said, we were just kind of talking about what the next things was, and he's like, well, what are you interested in? We were just having all the conversations, and told him I was kind of interested in missions and kind of planning trips and stuff. And he said, well, why don't you just do that? And I was like,
just do that.
Yeah, like that makes perfect sense. It was like a light bulb went off in my head. And so I did that, and started a nonprofit and did mission trip planning and organization. Spent a lot of time in Jamaica, and which is awesome. But I had taken a team down to Jamaica, several teams, and so I'd been down there for a couple of weeks. And my nephew was kind of sick, and I knew that. And my grandmother, my mom's mom, had already passed away, and my mom's dad wasn't doing very well. And I was there, and I was leaving the next day to come back. I'd been down there with teams for a couple of days, and I was there. And I remember just so vividly, I got a call from my mother, which is an international call. And so, that's pretty, they usually didn't call me. I would always call them. So I get a call, and I kind of walk outside of this little shopping mall area, and I'm standing on a bridge. And in Jamaica, they're not as big on sanitary and all that. And so there's all this trash. It's this ravine that literally leads out to the Caribbean Sea. And so I'm standing there over this bridge, and I'm talking to my mom. And she said, hey, I need to tell you something. And I was like, all right. Oh. And she said, hey, your nephew, his name is Caleb. Caleb's got cancer. And I was like, oh no. Wow. And so we're just kind of talking through that. And then we get to the next, and she said, I also need to tell you, hey, your grandfather just passed away. And so here I am.
Man.
I'm in Jamaica. I mean, just away from everybody. It's just me. The teams have already left and gone. It's just me. There is a contact I have there, and he's an eye doctor, and so he was practicing and doing, so I couldn't go talk to him. It was just absolutely just bonkers. But I remember, he was busy doing eye exam stuff. I just remember I just lost it, obviously, and there's this little mall area, several stories. I've got nowhere to go because I'm familiar with Jamaica, but I'm not I can't drive. I don't have a car. I don't have any of those things. So I just remember walking around in a circle, one of the upper levels, and it was a small area, so it wasn't, and I was just crying, and I was just felt so alone. And then the moment came for the doc to go eat lunch, and I just remember kind of sitting down there. It was just another one of those experiences where he didn't have the answers, right? But he just listened, and what a blessing that was in my life. And so, yeah, I think I've definitely had a ton of these moments where it's I knew that there was somebody that I could go to that they were just going to be a blessing to me in my life. And like I said, it didn't mean that my situations were better. You know what I'm saying? Right. Thankful my cousins now, my nephew, he's just finished up his freshman year of college. He's cancer free, so he's doing really, really well. And so, they didn't necessarily solve all of life's issues, but there is something that when someone is struggling or when they're suffering or there's things that are going on, and when I had those things in my life, they were people that I knew that I could go to that were going to be a blessing. And there have been times where people have given me stuff where I haven't had and I've needed, to be able to be, have people in positions that they do give. And sometimes I don't even know who gave in some situations and circumstances. And it's just been pretty amazing to kind of see the blessings that me and my family have received through time. And that reality of, I hope that people, they see me as a blessing in their life. It's so cool.
Yeah, it is cool. I just love listening to your experiences. Good. And it does remind you of when you were talking about that, I was thinking, man, the body of Christ really is beautiful when the body of Christ is functioning as He has designed it to, because we do go through seasons of good and bad. And that's probably what I'm going to start out with my message. And I'm going to sing a song that I co-wrote with my friends Sue Smith and Rue. But it starts out, in my battles, my blessings, you know, and, you know, we can rest in His grace because we are going to go through great times and horrible times. Yeah. And the body of Christ, we've got to lean on each other. We've got to help each other through those times, because that's part of life. And I do think that unbelievers in the world, you know, when we extend that kind of grace and love, and we listen and we help them through their hard times, that speaks volumes of, hey, I want what you've got, you know, because you don't even know me. And if you would do this loving thing towards me, you know, man, I want what you have. Right. You know, so yeah, the body of Christ, when we function the way that He has designed the body to work, it really is beautiful. Well,
we're scared, right? Because we read passages like, be in the world, not of the world. It's easy for us. I think it was easy even back then, and, you know, easy for the church to do sometimes. It's easy for us to push the world out, right? But the call is to be what you said, that we are in the world. We're not of the world. But it's just to be in the world and to make a difference. And if we're really going to be a blessing to the world, then we really have to be a blessing, you know? Right. And even Paul talks about that mentality of like, what good is it to bless people that like you? You know what I'm saying? Like, even the pagans, they do that. Like, if someone likes you, that's great that you like them and bless them back. But man, what good is that? Man, there is something to this mentality of the faith of living the kingdom, that as we are in the world and as we see hurt, even when someone can't reciprocate that blessing back to us, it doesn't mean that we don't bless. And, you know, I've had people countless times say, you know, or if I've blessed someone, they say, oh, well, I'll pay you back. And it's like, I don't want you to pay me back. You know what I'm saying? Like,
it takes the blessing away from me.
Yeah. Like, I don't want you to pay me back. But the call of the people of God is, this is what I tell them, is that the call is hopefully you'll be much more empathetic to someone down the road who is hurting or who really needs a situation, and you'll be willing to help them. Right. And that's how the kingdom of God grows and expands and does all those things.
And Christians are not exempt. And that's the one thing with me studying this Paul passage. You know, I'm reading these, like I said, horror stories of things that he's been through. And I just, like I said, I've been reading about the shipwreck. And so he goes through this awful time where there's no light for days and night, you know, on end. There's no stars, there's no sun, there's nothing. And then they finally like jump overboard and they make it to land, and he gets bit by a snake. I'm like, really? I mean, how much does this poor guy have to endure?
Yeah, talking about bad luck.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, and what's my complaint? But my goodness, to think though that God chose Paul to do that, and he knew he was going to go through all of that stuff, and yet his grace was enough, and he chose, and he still blessed people through all of that stuff. He was still a blessing. He was in prison writing letters, you know, to help us. You know, he was being a blessing as he was being cursed. And you know, Paul was chosen, and I was thinking about Abram. Can you imagine when God is telling him, hey, I'm going to make you great. I'm going to, you know, he's going, who, what, me? Yeah. Me? Why me? Yep. You know, and, but that's just how God works. He works through people to bring about his will. And that just blows my mind, because out of all the people, I'm sure Abraham was thinking, me, like, why me? You know, same thing we've said about Mary, like, who, me? And the same thing with David, you know, when he was chosen, that God looks on the heart when he chooses these assignments. And it blows my mind.
Yeah. And we do the same thing today. God, you're calling me. You're calling me to be a pastor. You're calling me to go talk to that person. You're calling me to bless that person, to give money. And like I said, it's so easy for us to do today on such a deep level. And that's why I love the Genesis 12 passage, because it is just so simple. It's so simple. And anybody can do it. Just, I'm going to bless you. You bless the world. I'm going to bless you. You bless the world. I'm going to bless you.
And he believed that.
Yeah.
And that's why it happened. He believed it. God said, I'm going to use you to bless the world. And he's like, okay. I mean, he didn't get it all right. And there were times I'm sure his faith wavered. I mean, we can see the crazy stories, of getting to that point. But he was cooperative. He was like, okay.
Yep.
Yep.
And we're not going to always get it right. And like I said, that's the beauty. That's the beauty of all of this. Is we're not going to always get it right, but we can always push towards that reality of being a blessing. That we know that God blesses us, and He has blessed us so much. Man, how are we going to take that blessing that God gives us and really, I guess, bless the world? What does that look like?
Give you grace upon grace upon grace to do it.
And it calls us sometimes to hard places, and it calls us to be, to stand up when things aren't right for people. And, I think that blessing comes out in a lot of different ways. It's not just monetary. It's not just, like I said, it's not just listening. The 2 stories I kind of told had to do kind of with this listening mentality. And yes, I think that's part of it. But I think blessing comes out in a lot of different forms, and we've got to be willing to allow it to be able to come out in a lot of different forms. Although that's not always easy.
Yeah.
So that's not always easy. The reality is easy. I'm going to bless you. You bless others. But that's sometimes that's not easy to live out.
Right. The little phrase, you can do hard things, comes to mind, and it's like sometimes you think, I can't, but with Him, we really can. And it goes back to Paul's words, I can do all things through Christ.
Right.
He's talking about when I had no clothes, when I had no food, when I had, nothing, I could be content, and then when I had everything going well for me, our joy can stay intact, as we're being this blessing, to other people. We can have peace and joy that only comes from God. That's supernatural.
Yeah. I know we have some international audience, I guess, that listens to us, but definitely here in the States, we've been blessed.
Yes, we have.
Very much blessed. And sometimes it's easy for us to continue to ask for blessings or say, God, we need you to bless us more and more and more. Like I said, I think sometimes God's like, I have blessed you. I've blessed you, and I've blessed you, and I've blessed you. Now, what are you going to do with that blessing? And maybe it's a good message for us to hear in the States and in the church on a deep level. Right. Maybe that's what we need to do. Is that's the focus? How are we going to bless? How are we going to bless? How are we going to bless? Because that's the call of God's people.
And you know what? He will give you opportunities. If you have the heart to bless, if you have the heart to be generous, He will give you the opportunities. Yep. And what I love about Him too is like, especially with money, if He's calling you to give or whatever, He always replenishes, so that you have more to give the next opportunity.
Right. Not that that's why we give.
No.
And I know you would say that.
Oh, yeah.
I know you would say that.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like when you step out in faith, you're like, I'll help them. And then before you know it, that seed's put back in your hand, and you're going, then I'll help them. You just keep giving and keep giving, and He will make sure that you have something to give away if you have a generous heart. Right. And it just, I don't know. God blows my mind. He really does. And, we talked in church, or Pastor Mark preached today about the Trinity, and I've been reading things about, the sovereignty of God. I went to church at a Presbyterian church before I went to church in Nazarene this morning, and just listening to the responsive readings about the sovereignty of God. And I don't know, and we were in this formal church, and it's beautiful and stained glass, and it's just beautiful, but it just reminds me of how big God is. And then Mark was talking about the Trinity and how complicated that really is. And then it gets down to He just wants to bless you, to bless other. It's like this complicated, humongous God uses people to bless others. I mean, He invites us to partner with Him. We don't work for Him, but He invites us to be a blessing. It's an invitation. That's just so cool.
So good. Well, we hope you've been blessed by this conversation we've had. Like I said, it was. I guess we did talk about lectionary. We just talked about what I think. We're going to be preaching about this coming Sunday.
But you can go read that. Genesis chapter 12.
They're so good, and I'm sure you'll find a lot of good nuggets in there. But man, may you continue to be blessed by God, and may you go bless others, and just keep living that life. Keep doing it, and you can do it. And you're not alone, and man, just keep pushing forward. We pray and hope that you did enjoy this conversation. Like I said, we don't know 100% what we're going to be doing moving forward. We're open to kind of whatever, but we want to keep on having just great conversations. And hopefully you'll keep on listening. And if you'd like to reach out to us, if you say, man, I want you guys to kind of talk about this, not that we are experts on anything, but we would love to, we'd love to talk about whatever you guys potentially want to hear about. You feel free to reach out to us at growinghopelivingfaith@gmail.com. We also have a Facebook page.
Growing Hope Living Faith
podcast, yes.
And I was thinking too, I just want to say hi to our new listeners. I did see Pastor Ryan from Gainesville Church in the Nazarene, and he's been listening, and he says that he likes to hear familiar voices.
Yes, thank you so much for listening, Pastor Ryan.
Oh yeah, Pastor Ryan, sorry.
So that's awesome.
He's doing a great job in Gainesville. Proud of the ministry he's doing there. So.
Absolutely.
Anyway, so thanks for listening.
Absolutely. Well, we do love you all. Pray and hope that you have a great rest of your week, a great Sunday coming up, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Grace and peace. God bless. Bye-bye.